jump into my presentation. So today we're going to talk about how to make IntelliJ IDEA your own. And I'll be touching on several different topics with like why you want to customize your IDE, what customizations are possible, the different types of plugins that exist. I'm also going to show some demos of plugins that I've created. And at this point, we'll talk about how you can create your first plugin, and we'll wrap it up with a few key takeaways from this session. And the first few minutes, I want to actually spend on why we want to customize our IDE. And the reason is I personally think that as software developers, we can building something or using a framework is not usually the hardest part of the problem. I think we do that pretty easily, or we will eventually figure out how to use the framework or build a plugin or build whatever may be the case. I think identifying that there is a problem and identifying, finding a motivation to build these plugins and creating software for the need of the hour is, I think, more important. And that's exactly what we will try to cover in the first section, which is why we want to customize our IDE and being able to build plugins that will cater to your needs and to your company's needs even. So for the very first section, which is why customize our IDE, I think it's not just applicable to our IDEs. I think it's applicable to anything else in our lives. But if you throw a software, if you throw a tool at a software developer, the first thing that we like to do is go and change the theme of it. Go change the fonts, change the layout, or add shortcuts, do whatever it is. We try to customize the tool immediately as soon as we are given a new tool. And there are valid reasons to do this. We do this because we want something to be aesthetically more appealing, it's more convenient, it increases our productivity, or it increases our sense of ownership. And as software developers, we rely very heavily on our tools. And the one such tool that I'm talking about here is our IntelliJ IDE. And yes, the one thing that I forgot to ask the audience here is if everyone here is an IntelliJ IDE user or is considering moving over from another IDE to IntelliJ IDE.
I still use Notepad. Does that count? I'm joking. I use IntelliJ IDEA. Yep.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. And I'm hoping that most of you are actually using the tool and hence want to see like how you can actually enhance it and make it even more efficient for you. And like you said, Prateek, Notepad was one of the ways to do it back in the day. And now we use IntelliJ IDE and to help speed up our software development process, to help stay focused on the business problem that we are solving. And every once in a while, I left this tweet in because every once in a while, I stumble upon a new feature. Either you learn that from your community or from your colleagues of a feature, and then you just wonder at it, and you think that this is magic. But what if I told you that the magic doesn't stop here, and that you can actually extend your IDE, customize it even more, so you can actually build, and that happens through plugins, which is what we'll get into in the next few sections. And with these plugins, you can actually create these personalizations for you and for your company. And in the next section, we'll talk about some of those ideas of what are some potential areas where you can have a plugin. So first out, I'm going to talk about this made-up graph, which I pretty much just added some numbers because I think that's this reflects like the reality of what we do as software developers. We do spend a lot of our time coding because that's what we do, but there's a good amount of time that we spend outside of our IDE. Whether it is with looking up Stack Overflow issues, whether it is with third-party tools that we use. Usually it could be your ticket tracking systems, Jira, U-Track, even GitHub issues for that matter. Or you could be using CI/CD tools, or any sort of repositories, which is again GitLab, GitHub. These are some of the examples. Or you could be using TeamCity, Jenkins, whatever may be the case. Or you're just out there on the internet, like looking up some information about a new framework that you're using. These are all places where when we are not on our IDE. And I personally think that those are points of distraction. And when you come back to your IDE, most of the times you're scratching your head or you're sitting there wondering what is it that you were even doing in the first place. The minute you leave your IDE, your context has switched. You have, and it takes a few minutes for you to actually get back to doing what you were doing. And if you are wondering why should we invest the time and energy into building these plugins, there are a few reasons for why we should be doing this and why we should be investing our time. Firstly, we all work for different companies. By that, what I mean is we have different coding guidelines. We have different frameworks. Even if you're working for an open source project, typically those two have some sort of a set workflow that you need to follow. And you might also be working with frameworks that are unique to you or to your company. They're internal frameworks, they're internal libraries for which you will not find a plugin in the open source marketplace. And the point of this presentation or this session is to show how you can build a plugin to bring insight and the context of these external tools that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis to your IDE. And of course, tasks that are repetitive. If you have workflows or things that are very unique to you, you will not find a plugin for it. And I think that's a good enough reason for us to stop and actually invest in this effort. So for the next section, we'll talk about what customizations are possible. Now, one of the biggest realizations I had when I was starting out with plugin development, IntelliJ IDEA plugin development, let me clarify, is that IntelliJ IDE is in itself made up of many, many plugins, and which is what makes it so much more easier to actually do plugin development. So the IntelliJ platform itself allows us to do this. Now, what do I mean by existing plugins? So if you've got your IDE in front of you, or if you're looking at my screen right now, we have several plugins right here in front of us that are staring at us. So you have on the right here, which is the Gradle and Maven tool window, which is typically how it is. In case you've changed your layout, it'll look in a different place, but this is where I have it. And you also have several other, you have a plugin for Git integration, you have the terminal plugin, you have several plugins here at the bottom as well. Anything that you see here in the pop-up menu or any of the editor menu pop-up options that you see are all, again, plugins. They're all possible because of plugins. Again, I'm not even talking about, I haven't even mentioned themes, key maps, inspections are, again, all examples of plugins, which the IntelliJ IDE itself is like composed of. Now let's talk about what actually, how all of this is possible. It's possible because of IntelliJ platform. You use the IntelliJ platform SDK to build these plugins. And the biggest benefit out of using IntelliJ platform SDK is that you can actually leverage all the existing infrastructures. So whether it is with your JetBrains Swing components, which is nothing but, if you're familiar with Java Swing or if you've used Java Swing, the JetBrains Swing components are basically just a layer above that. They are custom components written purely for JetBrains products. So if you were to create something that looks like this, you can pretty much use all of these different icons with different like actions that are available to you. You can actually leverage all of that. And we'll see some of that in the demos as well. The other advantage, of course, along the same lines, you can use their tool windows. You find several integration points. So you can very quickly build the tool integration plugin that can sit right here. Again, we'll talk more about it in the demo as well. And if you want to add language support, like custom language support plugins, you can use their program structure interface, which basically helps you with detecting the type of file that it is, detecting the programming language that it uses, and you can do you can add more code completion. You can add code completion, find usages, and other such features by using their program structure interface. I haven't explored that, but those are some of the plugins that you can also build. And the other realization is that plugin development is nothing but software development. So plugins are basically small applications, lightweight applications that are living within your IDE. And as soon as you get your IDE up and running, if you have your plugin installed, it's actually running behind the scenes. And it's no different. I know when I thought of it as plugin development, I thought I had to learn an entirely different programming language. In this case, you can actually do this in just using Java or any of the JVM languages. I think, and Kotlin is one of their more popular plugin development language. I've used Java because that's my comfort zone. I definitely have to try building a plugin in Kotlin as well. So for the next section, we'll talk about the different types of plugins. Now, you don't really need to know the different types of plugins, just need to know like these are the types that are available. So it can help you inspire, like it can help you with like ideating for like new plugin ideas. When I first started out writing plugins, all that I thought was available to me was the tool integration plugin. And we later figured out that there were other such plugins that we can also explore. So for the tool integration plugin, it's as the name suggests, it's where you would integrate with third-party tools. It could be your ticket tracking system, your project management tools, Jenkins, CI/CD tools, whatever may be the case, you can bring in that context to your IDE. One such third-party tool plugin that I like using a lot is SonarLint, which is a plugin that I have installed right here. So that's the type of tool integration plugin. For the next one, which is the user interface add-ons, you can make changes to the IDE. So it could be either adding a pop-up menu action in any of these places, or it could be your editor pop-up menu. So I'm going to quickly switch over here, and you could add actions right here based on the type of file that you're looking at. And these are all just examples of user interface add-ons. The third type, custom language support plugin, which is, I think, the most, perhaps like the most difficult type of plugin to write. In this, you can add features for a given programming language. So for example, if you wanted to add new inspections, or if you wanted to do code completion, syntax highlighting, that's just a few that I named over here. There is a lot more that you can do. And you would want to choose a custom language support plugin for those use cases, if those are the things that you want to focus on. Then framework integration, which is very similar to the tool integration one, but you can actually bring, if you've used the Spring or Docker plugins, or if you see those little green things that appear if it's a Spring file, if it's a configuration file, those are all again happening via plugins. So you can actually add insights of the specific framework or the library that you're using and bring that into your IDE. Which is, again, the type is called framework integration plugin. And UI themes, I don't have to talk about this. You can go ahead and create UI themes. I think that's probably the first thing that everyone would want to try out. So that's another option, another type of plugin that you can create. I've also linked a resource of the different types of plugins from the JetBrains documentation itself, which is and they have examples of existing plugins that fall under each of these categories. So you can definitely take a look at that and see if any of that makes sense, or if that is something that you also want to do. So this is definitely helped me explore different types of plugins, and we can jump into the demos to see what I've done, what I've built in the past few weeks. So for the very first one, it's a type of tool integration plugin. And I decided to integrate it with Stack Overflow. That's a place that I tend to go quite often. So I figured, let me create a plugin that will integrate Stack Overflow into my IDE, so I don't have to step out of my IDE to get information. So for this, I have two search boxes over here: search by tag, search by title. So I'm going to just do Maven as a tag and Java 11. That seems to be like a popular thing to look up. So I'm doing that, and I'm going to pull this up a bit. And you can see that I have some results that I populated. I've got some title tags. I'm also, I think, ordering it by the most recent post on each of these. I've also got a handy link right here, and also when it was updated and last updated. So I can click on this, and this should take me to my browser to the link if that is what I'm interested to explore further. Now, the focus of this plugin is to show you how you can do it, and not really on the aesthetics or like what else can you do with this plugin. The point of this is to show how easy it was to write a plugin which is of this type. So first off, right off the bat, because I created this as a tool integration plugin and I registered this as a tool window, I get some features out of the box for which I didn't have to write any additional code. So I get this gear icon right here, and I also get this minimize icon, which is what you would see in any other tool window. So you can see this, which is what you will find in other tool windows as well. So that's first thing. The second thing here is these two search boxes right here. Now, if you've used IntelliJ often, you might find that I'm using something which is familiar, which you would have seen elsewhere. Let me do that. Let me show you guys what that is. So I've got the settings. I've got the settings window right here, and you can see that I'm using the exact same search box. And this is what I was trying to tell you earlier, which is you can use the existing infrastructure. And I didn't have to write any additional code. It's a custom JetBrains Swing component, which I ended up using. And the best part about using this is that it also retains history. It can like help me close out. I can go back and do this, and all of that works out of the box. Uh, Another thing that might stand out here is that I'm also using icons that are very familiar to us, which is you would see here for the run configuration. I'm basically just using the same icon, but I'm here. The purpose of behind this button right here is getting Stack Overflow issues. In a different case, it is running your application. But the point here is that I can use the several different icons that they've made available as part of the IntelliJ Platform SDK. The same goes with this icon right here, the reload. I think it's the reload all from disk, which is what I'm doing to clear inputs and results. As you can see here, this is again a JetBrains table component, which has like its own. It does. You can actually customize this to see like if you wanted it to color alternate rows. However you want to customize this, you can do so by enabling the different feature options that it comes with. And I just want to show you this. That looks good. And that's about it. And I can go back and do this if I wanted to. And that looks good. So that's the Stack Overflow tool integration plugin. Again, this is something that I built. You will not find this in the JetBrains Marketplace. It's sitting in my local right now. It's just a plugin that I installed right now. So the second plugin, I have to switch over to Eclipse Collections Cutter right here. For the second type of a plugin, the second type of the plugin that I want to demo is user interface add-ons. Now, if you remember, one of the examples that I said about this type of a plugin is that you can actually add more editor pop-up menu options, like right here. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do for this plugin is being able to search for code snippets on GitHub. And my plugin is configured such that the plugin is smart enough to only show me that option when I have text selected. So you won't normally see it. Again, that's something that you can configure very easily in the plugin. And you can see that I have a new option right here, search GitHub. It's very similar to search with Google. I just added a new option because I wanted it to be focused and only give me results from GitHub. So we'll just see what it does. If I did search GitHub, it should open up the search results from github.com and in my browser with a click of a button. At this point, I could have also done more things. I could have also filtered this further by Java, and that is something that you can use the program structure interface to actually include that information as well. So it can actually programmatically determine that this is a type of Java file, send that as a query parameter, and then you're good to go. That is something that you can do to this plugin. For now, I just left it as this. If you check out the code, then you can add that as an enhancement. But I find that this is pretty helpful for me when I want to look up new APIs. So that's the second type of plugin. For the third type of plugin, I want to, and this is the custom language support plugin. Again, just a quick refresher. The custom language support plugin is if you wanted to add new inspections, find usages, code completion. or many other such features. If you wanted to do that for a given programming language, you can do so easily. And I did just that. I added a new inspection. As I mentioned earlier, I am a committer on an open source project called Eclipse Collections. And the goal of this plugin was to convert some of these stream APIs into Eclipse Collections APIs. For example, if I have a code snippet which says filter find first and or else null, I wanted it to convert. I wanted to convert that into the equivalent Eclipse Collections API, and I wrote an inspection for this. Which is not something that I could have just configured from just using the inspections tool window from settings. So I had to write a manual inspection. I had to create a plugin for this. And you can see right here, it is set to warning right now. The inspection is set to warning. So you can see that it has the light yellow color coding that it's done. And you can see it says use detect in Eclipse Collections. And if I have a, yeah, it should say filter and find first can be replaced with detect from Eclipse Collections. It also says use detect, and I can also give more, I've also added more information about this inspection, which basically goes to say that this is the type of code pattern it's looking for, and it's going to convert it into something like this. And you can read more about this API. So this is basically things that you can configure in your plugin. You can give as many details as you want about what that inspection actually does. For the purposes of the demo, this is all I have. And at this point, it's like any other inspection. Your Alt and Enter should work, or you could hit this bulb. I can just say use detect in Eclipse Collections, and it should look good. So that's the third type of plugin. So this is called a custom language support plugin. And I'm also working towards creating more such inspections for Eclipse Collections in general. But that was something fun to explore and figure out how to convert like Streams APIs into Eclipse Collections APIs. That's with the demos. Renat, are there any questions in the chat so far? I want to just quickly pause to see if there are any questions.
There are some questions I'm answering regarding like Marketplace and installing plugins, but I haven't seen any other questions yet.
Okay.
But if anyone has any questions, feel free to, unmute or put them in the chat.
Cool. Sounds good. I hope everyone's following what I'm saying as well. So just want to give it a second. Cool. So now that we've discussed what are the different types of plugins that we can build, and I was able to do it, so you can do it as well. We'll talk about how you can go ahead and create your first plugin. Like I said, I think more importantly, trying to figure out what is it that you want to solve for first, and then building the plugin is there are a couple of moving parts into building a plugin. I will not deny that. But I'll show you like the different things that happen behind the scenes when you're creating your first plugin. So we'll go over like some of these different things. So first off, if you want to create a plugin, you want to use the new project wizard. So you want to do new project. And at this point, you want to select Gradle. Now, that is something that you need to use Gradle. Maven is not supported. So you'll have to select Gradle for this. And they have documentation explaining why Gradle and the kind of flexibility that it provides for plugin development. You're going to choose Java. I'm using 11. I think I have some other versions, but I'm going to just stick to 11 for now. And you want to select IntelliJ platform plugin. Now, this plugin will help you create a bunch of these configuration files. All the initial scaffolding that you need for the plugin is all provided to you by this plugin. So a plugin to create your plugin. So why not? Let's use it. You don't have to use this upfront, but then that would mean that you would have to manually add a bunch of these files. So I would definitely say that use the IntelliJ platform plugin, hit next, give it a name, demo, PGH again, and then you give it artifact coordinates. Like this is the same with any other project. So you're going to do all of that and hit finish. As it is loading, I can show you how it looks like when it is an empty project. So it makes it so much more easier to actually develop your plugins. I have that the share button, which is stopping me from. Okay, so you have the plugins, the project, empty project right here. It's also running some tasks behind the scenes for downloading Gradle, downloading IDEA snapshots and whatnot. So let's just look at the empty project itself. I'm not going to go into a lot of details about the Gradle files. I'll just call out the pieces which affect the IntelliJ plugin itself. So you have the settings.gradle file, you have the build.gradle file. So let's start with the build.gradle file. So a few things to note over here. This is exactly what you need. This is probably what you just need to create a plugin. So it's as simple as that. So for the first one, since I chose Java as the programming language for this plugin, it's created included the Java plugin. This is the Gradle IntelliJ plugin that you need to use, and this is probably the latest version. I think the plugin automatically fetches the latest version for this. Now, the Gradle IntelliJ plugin is what helps you build your plugin, test your plugin, verify that the contents of it, like especially the configuration files and everything that you need for a plugin are good, and also helps you publish the plugin to JetBrains Marketplace if that is where you want to host your plugins. If you wanted to do this in an internal repository, in a private repository, or just for yourself, then you don't have to use the publish plugin features, but that is what you can do. And I'm going to quickly show you where all of this is available. Okay, this is still syncing, so we can come back to that in just a second while this loads. So the next thing right here is, of course, there's dependencies, which is similar to what you would do in your POM file. You can add new dependencies as depending on the use case of your plugin. And then the next section, okay, we'll come back to that. So for the next section, which is IntelliJ, this is the version that you want to specify. This is the version with which you will be building and testing your plugin. So in my case, it says 20.3 version. It could be an older version, a later version, but there is some compatibility features that you would have to worry about if you're not using the latest plugin, which again, the IntelliJ will also hint at. And then you have the patch plugin, which is where you will give your release notes or your change notes, whatever you want to call it. And then we'll see how all of this information ties back into when you're actually installing a plugin. So just remember that the release notes section is coming from the build.gradle file for now. And I'll look into what's happening with this. The next file that is important is the plugin.xml file, which is considered to be the starting point for your plugin. It's almost like your entry point for your plugin. This XML file is what describes the why, the what, why, and how of a plugin in a way. So for this section, I'm actually going to jump back into the plugins demo so we can see some of the existing plugins that I've already built out and see what the data looks like. Just to take a step back for a second, as I was talking about the Gradle IntelliJ plugin, these are all the tasks that you will see in your Gradle tool window as soon as you've added the Gradle IntelliJ plugin, which works fine for this version. So I'm wondering if it was the latest version which caused the build to break. So let's jump back into the plugin.xml file. So I'm here on the tool integration plugin, which is the Stack Overflow demo. So the first section, which is the what is this plugin? So, and who does it belong to, I guess. So you have the ID. This is the same ID, I believe, which is coming from the artifact coordinates. And then you give it a name. And then you also give the vendor information. So in this case, I've just left it as some random information, but this could be your company name or your private email address, but this is information that will show up against your plugin. And you also have a description. This description can be more than one line, and you can write as much as you want for what this plugin really does. And I'm going to quickly pause here and show you all how it looks once when you've installed a plugin. So for example, the Stack Overflow demo, which we were just looking at, you can see right here, I am having difficulties today. Okay, that's fine. Okay, this is probably good. So you have the name, which is the Stack Overflow demo, the vendor information, which is SP, and you can do this, and you can see all my other demos as well, or not. And then you can, this is the description information, which shows up over here, and change notes, if you remember, was from the build.gradle file. And in this case, I just have the initial commit, and this is also available for users of your plugin to know really what is happening with the release, with the latest release. I'm going to show you another example, which is Sonar Lent. The same thing, they have a name, they have the vendor information, they have a pretty long descriptive description there, and also their change notes, which is maintained from each version. So this gets, this is something that you can maintain in just from build.gradle file. So that is how all this information comes together. So for the next 3 sections is how actually the plugin operates or it functions. So the first section is depends. At a minimum, you need to depend on the IntelliJ modules.platform. So what this really means is that you're going to use all the shared functionality of the IntelliJ platform module. And you can read more about it right here. So for a plugin such as mine, which is the Stack Overflow demo, all that you need to do is depend on just the platform modules. So you get the UI, the tool windows, all of the different components that the IntelliJ IDEA itself shares. You get all of that for free or out of the box by adding just this dependency. Now, for a different type of plugin, for the custom language support plugin, we'll see how the dependency will change slightly, but this is all that you need to get started with the plugin development. The next 2 sections, which is extensions and actions, are both ways in which you can extend your IDE. This is where the logic behind your plugin actually resides. In this case, and you can have one or the other or both even in some cases. In this case, kept it simple. All that you need is an integration, an extension point, which is tool window. Like I mentioned earlier, because I have this set up as the tool window, I'm getting a few things free and out of the box, such as this, and I can anchor it at a certain location. So you will see that just now. Each extension point will have a starting point, an entry point, which is going to be sort of like your main class for the plugin to really function. And this is where you'll describe what your plugin does. And at this point, it's just Java code. Let's go back here, and it has an ID, which is the same ID that you would see here. And you can anchor it at the bottom, or you could do, I think it's east and west or left and right. So those are the other 2 options that you could have used. And in this case, I have it set up at the bottom because that's where I like it, but you could change the orientation to a different location. So that's exactly what an extension does. We will let's look at the user interface demo, which was the search GitHub plugin demo. If you look at this plugin, it has the same set of information. It has an ID, name, description, vendor info, and then the depends, like I said, at a minimum, you need at least the platforms module. You'll use that. And then I don't have anything registered for extensions here because I don't need it. And in this plugin, I've only added an action. An action also works similar to an extension point in the sense that this is where the main functionality of that action or that plugin that you're developing will reside. Just as how we had an ID for an extension, you'll just have an ID similarly, you'll have an ID for an action as well. It has a class, it has an entry point, which we can see that it actually extends dumb-aware action, and you're going to give it the description of, you're going to implement the functionality of this plugin right here. And it might be surprising, but this is all that went into creating the search GitHub plugin. So it's pretty straightforward at that point. And then text is what you see here that it gets displayed. So search GitHub, that's exactly what I have here. And then a description. And then icons. We talked about this earlier. They have a huge repository for all these icons. I'm basically just using the same icon that they have elsewhere. They have the same icon, which is exactly what I'm repurposing for my plugin as well. And then at the end of it, this is important. You can add it to an existing group or create a new group of actions. In this case, since I wanted it here, right here in the editor pop-up menu, I'm adding the group ID here as editor pop-up menu, and I'm going to anchor it after the search web option, which, if you remember, was the search Google option. So that's pretty much what goes into the action plugin. Sorry, for a user interface action plugin. And all of this configuration is right here. Where should it be located? What is the name that you want to display? The icon, all of this information is right here. So that's another type of plugin. For the third type of plugin, which is the custom language support plugin, let's look at its plugin.xml file, which will only change slightly in the sense that we add an additional dependency. Like I said, with custom language support, you can add new features for a given programming language. I think you can do for like Ruby, Python, if you wanted to support Java, JavaScript, I think can also be supported. But in this case, I wanted to do something for Java. So I've added this new one right here, a new dependency for Java. And I have a different extension point this time around. So for the tool integration one, I had tool window. For actions, it was a different entry point. But for the custom language support plugin, it's local inspection. As with each extension point, you will see the attributes change. And in this case, I have the language as Java, group path, group bundle messages, all of this. It's enabled by default, which is true. And I've set it to level warning. If this was set to error, I would have probably gotten like red lines under the code that was under inspection. Again, it too has an implementation class. So we can open this and you can see that it actually extends the abstract base Java local inspection tool, which you get if you added the Java dependency, the Java module dependency, not the plugin itself, but this is the actual module to get all the features that you can use to support Java programming language. Now, it can seem a bit overwhelming in the beginning, especially as you're juggling these different configuration files. But as with any other thing, you keep practicing and then you'll get the hang of it, basically. So that's with your first plugin. I do have a few more things that I wanted to show you. We've covered all of these things. How do you test your plugin? So this is one of the coolest things about IntelliJ plugins and the plugin development itself. You get instant feedback and instant gratification by just running this one task. And you can see it's right here under IntelliJ. So for example, I have the custom language support plugin, IntelliJ, and run IDE. The one thing I can do is go back to this, enable this, maybe change the custom language support plugin to be error instead of warning, and you'll see a change in how this plugin will look. So I'm running this task right now. Hopefully it will actually run and not disappoint me for a demo. While it is loading, Renat, are there any questions on the chat?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. 1 second.
Okay.
We have one question from Philip asking, I'm wondering what measures, if any, the plugin platform and the marketplace have for protecting us from malicious plugins.
From malicious plugins?
Mm-hmm. And
I have no idea.
I can
to be
always
very
help.
honest.
Okay.
Yeah. I have no idea if they do any additional scans and stuff before they allow us to publish to JetBrains repository. So far, I haven't had to publish anything to the JetBrains Marketplace, but Renat, if you know the answer.
Yeah, so I guess first, I also haven't published anything to JetBrains Marketplace quite yet, but I I have read through their stuff, and they do have an approval process in place. So anytime you release a new plugin or a new version, they have a verification and approval process that JetBrains employees go through. So they go over your plugin, and that process has steps like making sure that there are no security vulnerabilities or privacy issues, or in case your plugin is collecting statistics, your plugin needs to have an explicit like ask for explicit permission from the user. So those are just only a couple of things, but there's a whole list of criteria they go over. So I guess that's their way of protecting from malicious plugins, that there's this whole approval process prior to them even publishing anything in their marketplace. But if you are curious, you can always look up JetBrains plugins approval guidelines, and you can look over the process yourself. But hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and actually that is on the flip side, that is one of the reasons why you can build plugins for yourself. So you don't like send anonymous data outside, especially if you're working in a firm and you don't want to be sending data outside to some third-party tools like whatever is their server where they're collecting all of this data. If you want to prevent all of that from happening, this is just the flip side. I know it's not the question that you asked, but again, one more reason why you should actually be like building some of these plugins, especially if you have internal tools and you have security issues. I come from a finance industry, so that's definitely something that we always have to worry about. So just to wrap up this, the demo part. So I ran the run IDE task, and you can see that it actually opened up a new IntelliJ IDE with just the plugin of interest. Since I ran the custom language support plugin, it only installed that, and you can see that I don't have Sonarlint here, Stack Overflow. It only looks slightly different. It only comes back to me with the plugin that I was running the task for. And you can see here, I changed this from warning to error. So you can see the changes for yourself. It's no more the highlighted warning code. It's actually the red error lines right now. And that's something that you can quickly test out and see if your plugin is working as expected, and you get feedback for what you're actually developing on this with using the IntelliJ Platform SDK. I'm going to close this off, and that is one way to actually use a build plugin or like even run IDE task. Going back to a few more things. The one other thing that I stumbled upon when I was first building plugins is internal actions. Now, this is very, very helpful, especially if you use the IDE a lot and you want to develop something for your use case, and you want to use a component, let's say that looks like this. Then there is a way to actually inspect inspect what is happening behind the scenes, behind a component, so you can actually end up using it in your own plugin, which is how I stumbled upon these two as well, because I didn't know that it was called a certain thing in the IntelliJ Platform SDK. So this definitely helps discover new JetBrains components, which is always fun. So for you to do this, you'll have to go in here and do UI inspector, and it's already turned on. So I'm going to turn off, and I'm also going to turn back on, and you can see a little tip over here which says Control Alt click to view component info. So I can do this, for example. I can, and it should open up. Hold on, it went into my other screen. It should open up a tool window like this, or I guess just a window, which actually tells you that it is it's part of some action toolbar. It has an action button. It tells you more information about the icon, like it's the actions execute icon. That's the button that I'm using for Stack Overflow. And you can get a lot more information about a component. In fact, we can also take a look at this. I think the search, you can also click over here if you wanted to. So you can do search with Google, and it actually tells you the exact action. In this case, this is the ID, and this is where I wanted it to anchor the GitHub action. So I have the ID information handy. And I also know what the search web action was doing, which is something that you can use and help inspire you to build your own plugin. And you don't have to, it definitely helps with the discovery process of these new components. So that's about it for internal actions and the UI inspector. So I guess I'm in the last section right now, which is good. We are 7 minutes before this call ends. So I guess a few important things to talk about over here, or key takeaways for this session is we all agree that plugins save time and it increases our productivity. But being able to build our own plugins is something that we will appreciate once when we've made that initial investment. So plugins are developed using Java or JVM languages. You don't need to learn a different language to go and build plugins. It's no different from any other application or software that you would develop. These are small, lightweight applications that live in your IDE container. Again, you can, and they also go through the same software development process, like with building a plugin, with testing it. It's the same sort of software development lifecycle that it goes through as well. This third point was a quote that I heard from Trisha G in one of her sessions where she talks about context is queen. I think IntelliJ really does a fantastic job of providing contextual actions wherever you need refactoring, or even with, like, if you're on a Java class file, like it actually helps you with what are some of the actions that are possible based on the context of where you're at. But I think that being able to teach your IDE new contexts of what you're doing is definitely a game changer. Being able to bring context that you are familiar with, or you have unique experience with, and being able to bring it back to your IDE is definitely will help improve the quality of your software developer life. And if you are looking for ideas of what are some of the plugins that you want to get started with, I think the best way to do this is look at the third-party tools that you have, that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, or things that you commonly tend to do, and see if you can actually bring in that context into your IDE. And you can start with something as simple as the search with GitHub. Search GitHub or search with Google, whatever is those kind of editor pop-up menu actions, and see that if plugin development is something that you will be interested in. For the last section, which is basically just resources, but they have a lot of documentation, but I only narrowed it down to these 10 resources because they do have quite a lot of it. And if you just end up going to one of these links, you can navigate and see other things that are also available for documentation. So they have the quick start guide, the main types of plugins that we already discussed, but this is where you'll find all the examples of existing plugins. And you'll also have my GitHub repository soon, where you can also, use my examples maybe to build on top of what you're trying to do. The IntelliJ platform plugin templates. Now, this is something that I haven't explored, but there is an alternate way to actually go ahead and build a plugin. But in this case, you would have to, this uses a GitHub template. So you can actually go and clone it or fork it, and then you can create your own repository, which will be sitting on github.com, and you can push your code there, and it actually creates all these configuration files as well. I find this to be much simpler using the new project wizard and creating the IntelliJ platform plugin, because it has fewer configuration files that I have to deal with, and it just helps speed up with the plugin development process itself. And then you also have Extensions Explorer, which is pretty cool. If you do not know the extension point, if you know you want to integrate with Git, let's say, and you do not know what is the extension point name, you can use this Extension Explorer to find existing extensions, and you can use that in your plugin.xml file. They also have some pretty good guidelines. It's not comprehensive, but they have some pretty good UI guidelines. Like I'm not a front-end developer at all, and it's actually very hard for me to come back with like aesthetics of where something should be placed and what should be given, what sort of titles should you be using. And they have some good UI guidelines on where to use text boxes versus where to use buttons, where to use a certain component. And they have examples of how IntelliJ IDEA itself does it. So this is, again, a great resource. I consult it quite often when I'm introducing a new component into my plugin. The plugin configuration file, which we went over, which is the plugin.xml file. We went over actions, extensions. Again, please take a look at any of these resources. You have the Gradle IntelliJ plugin task, which has a bunch of things that you can do. Gradle in general is very powerful and flexible. And there is a lot more that you can do with even giving build ranges. Like if you want your plugin to be compatible from a certain range between two build ranges, then you can actually do that as well. And then lastly, the UI inspector, I think this is a hidden gem, which I'm very surprised is not as popularly promoted as it should be. I find this to be fun, to be going and clicking on different things to figure out new JetBrains components that you can use in your plugin. With that, I'm done. Yeah. Thank you so much.
We have a couple